Hi, I'm Debbie Harbeck, and I'm a certified life coach working with women in midlife and through the menopause transition. So each week, I'll be sharing the latest information, inspiration, and generate some momentum so you can move forward and feel more in control of your changing midlife body and your life. Let's go. Hey, how are you doing? I'm glad you're back. So I want to talk to you today about one practice I do that gives me the best feeling of health and well-being and calm. And that is walking outdoors. I really feel like it's literally saved me in my life more than once. So whenever I feel blah or meh or exhausted, unmotivated, overwhelmed, all these things, I take those feelings on a walk. And like magic, it's like a fog tends to lift and I just feel better. Maybe you can relate to this. Maybe you have a walking practice. Maybe you've taken these feelings out on a walk. But I'm sure you've felt these feelings before. So I know this could be a really important solution for you, especially right now. Or maybe you can relate to the more physical stuff that may be happening to your body right now, like hot flashes, joint pain, headaches, fatigue, digestive issues, all the good stuff. I know that walking can actually make you feel better in all those ways. And as I record this episode, it's actually Earth Day. So it's really appropriate because walking doesn't just benefit you as a person, it can also benefit the planet. And when you choose to walk instead of drive, you are doing a lot of good in the world. But walking for yourself will help you feel better and lighter, and it's one of the easiest and most important things you can do every single day. And you may be thinking of walking up until this point as exercise. It's fat loss, it's burning calories, but I really hope that through this episode, you'll begin to see walking differently and embrace it as something different, and that's something you want to do because it brings physical and emotional well-being. I know when I work with my clients, I know many of you discount walking as an adequate form of exercise because it isn't intense enough, because it's not really cardio enough, or it's not burning the weight off. But as you go through this menopause thing that we're going through, I promise you that walking at a normal pace, and I'm not talking about speed walking, but I'm also not talking about sauntering, just slowly strolling, but walking at a pace you can sustain and look around and feel good at, you'll be doing your body so many huge favors, even if weight loss is your goal. Because if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know that managing stress is probably the best thing you can do for weight loss and for your overall health and well-being. And walking outside gives you that. So a couple of months ago, I think it was February, I was feeling really unmotivated, like really no desire, just kind of lazy and meh. And I was talking to my coach about it and telling her how I was feeling, and she knows me well. So she asked me, have you been walking lately? And normally I do walk every day, whether it's to walk the dog or I walk with friends or I walk and listen to a podcast or just to get away from my desk, I'm walking. But she asked me this in February and I realized that it had been days since I'd been out for a walk. And it just hit me. I didn't know it, but that's what was missing. The weather hadn't been great, so I'd been going to the gym, but I hadn't been walking outside. So I simply started walking again from that day, getting outside no matter what the weather, and my motivation returned. My energy came back, and I just felt good again. And even my hip, which, as you might know, has been giving me issues lately because I probably have osteoarthritis. It appears so on the x-ray. But my hip even feels better when I walk. But it's not just the walking, it's the getting outside piece of it. Getting outdoors just is this magical thing. It lifts the heaviness of the problems and the to-dos that are weighing you down. And recently I had this realization when I was out on a walk and I was observing the birds and they're flitting around and the squirrels are scurrying around. And I realized that these animals they're not out there worrying about anything. They're not worried about a job or making mortgage payments, or they're not worrying about what the squirrel in the tree next to them said or anything like that. Nature doesn't carry all these man-made burdens around. And yet we are nature too. You and me, we're nature. And when you really think about that and you get into that mindset, you realize that all that's really important is that you're breathing, that you're moving, that you're alive. And everything else is just stuff. It's just clouds. So for your mind, walking can really help you take a load off, and nature can show you what's important. And for your physical body, walking at a normal pace, and I said, it's not about walking fast, none of that. Walking at a normal, good pace has been shown to decrease blood pressure, cholesterol, heart rate, and insulin or blood sugar. So it decreases all those things. And it also decreases your level of cortisol or stress, decreases your anxiety, your symptoms of depression, and it increases feelings of hopefulness and motivation. So it is kind of like magic. And I love walking. I've been doing it for most of my life. It started as just walking to school. I had a pretty long walk when I was in high school. It was probably around 3K to get to school and back. Well, then back would be 6K. And then even when I got older and I started working, I would walk on my lunch break at work. And in fact, when I was still living at home and I had just started working, my mother, she was in her 50s at the time, she wanted to start a walking practice. And she wanted to walk early in the morning, and she wanted to walk with somebody, and my dad just was too slow for her. So she wanted somebody who could walk faster. So she asked me, and I started going with her, and it was just really nice. It was a time where sometimes we would talk and sometimes it would just be in complete silence. It was just really my first time going walking without it being about going from A to B. It was walking to feel good. And it just exposed me to, wow, okay, walking can be this whole other thing. And from there, I started running, in fact, and it kind of replaced walking for me. At that time when I ran, I had no watch, or I wasn't thinking about my pace or my distance. I was just going to run to get the same benefit as walking, but just to increase my cardio and just feel that stress relief and feeling good. But running over time became training for me. And I was looking at my watch and I was checking my pace and distance, and it kind of lost that magical benefit that I was getting from walking in the first place. So I reintroduced walking because I needed it. And what's great about walking is that you can do it alone, you can do it with a partner, you can listen to a podcast or a book, you can walk to the grocery store, or you can walk and talk on the phone. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was on a call with my coach and I decided to be coached while walking, which I had actually never done before, strangely enough, because I usually like to write things down when I'm being coached. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. And I just felt like it was strange. I felt like I could remember the session better. I still remember it better. And I was able to make connections better when she was asking me questions. And that's probably because our brains and bodies, they're one. So if you're moving your body, your brain is also being nourished by that circulation that's moving around. And so it makes sense that your brain would just work better. So you can walk and talk and be coached, and maybe you'll just notice an amazing thing happen. But if you can, I would suggest doing walks every so often in silence. In silence, you can be totally present. Just practicing this presence, noticing your thoughts, and maybe even noticing inspiration if it strikes. Because walking in that way can do what sitting in meditation does. It can create space for solutions and creativity and all kinds of good ideas to show up. So I hope maybe you're feeling motivated to walk more because of this episode. I don't know if you already have a walking practice or maybe you want to create one, but I definitely want to encourage you to go for it. So this May, I'll actually be launching a walking challenge. I've never done this before, But I thought it would be a really good idea because there are so many benefits. And until you do it, you really don't know what they are. So I'm going to do this walking challenge. It's for 30 days of walking for 20 minutes every day, no matter what the weather. We're going to get out in the rain. We're going to get out in the cold if it gets cold. We're going to get out there in all the weather. We're going to dress for it. But the only goal of this challenge is to be consistent, to do it daily, no matter what. So that is the challenge. Now, as a byproduct, you may lose a few pounds. You may feel less anxious. You may notice that your joints are feeling better. Great. But the only real goal I want you to have is to walk for 20 minutes a day so you can create a walking habit. And then notice how it makes you feel. So be curious during this challenge if maybe your clothes fit a little better, or you're sleeping better, or you're having less hot flashes, or you feel like you've got more energy. I know that walking daily is powerful, and I really want you to experience this. So that is why I'm doing this, because it will transform you. So just stay tuned. I'll be sending that challenge out by email in the next week or so. And if you're not on my mailing list, then email me and I will add you. So you can find my email address in the show notes of this episode. So please go find it, send me an email, and I will add you to the list. So with that, I want to thank you for listening to this episode today. Once again, I'm super grateful you chose to join me. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something here, I'd love you to rate it or review it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or whatever platform you like to listen on. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll be back next week with a fresh new episode. So keep moving forward, and bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Midlife Momentum Podcast. If you want to learn more about working with me, come visit me at debbieharbeckcoaching.com. That's Debbie, I-E, Harbeck with a C, coaching.com. See you next week.